Today's episode is about that familiar moment when politics stops feeling like policy and starts feeling like a panic attack with a microphone. The Supreme Court drew a hard line on IEEPA tariffs. The White House responded in its own style. And somewhere in the background, a board of peace is being rolled out with big symbolism and thin operational reality. If you've been watching all of this and thinking, am I taking crazy pills? Good. You're not alone. This is Shrink the Nation. Let's go.
This is Shrink the Nation, a podcast for thoughtful, informed adults, preferably holding a drink and definitely holding a thought. The views expressed here are ours alone. They do not represent our employers, institutions, licensing boards, government agencies, bourbon distilleries, or most emphatically, our families. They've been very clear about that. This show is for education and entertainment only. Nothing you hear is medical, psychiatric, legal, or professional advice. We're clinicians, not your clinicians. If something we say stirs you up, that's not a crisis, that's a journal entry, or an email sent politely. We're here to challenge ideas, not diagnose strangers on the internet. And if you are in real distress, please reach out to a professional who can actually help you.
Hey, I'm David. I've got my 20 plus years in the military. I'm a board certified psychiatrist. And today I've got no liquid beverage in front of me at all, which I feel like I'm going to regret about halfway through this.
Some of these topics do call out for a healthy dose. But hey, it's Rob. I've got 26 years in psychiatry, board certified, 30 years in the military. I too am beverageless this evening.
Is this just poor planning on our part? Forgot to go to the liquor store or what?
A little bit of all the above, I think.
Yeah. The truth is, I don't often get to see you, Rob, sober. Me, not you. Honestly, I'm tired of looking at your fat fucking face.
Yeah, I know it.
You're a lot less attractive when I'm 0 fingers deep
Yeah.
in bourbon.
I've been told that I have the world's most punchable face.
I told you not to repeat that to
Yeah.
anybody. No, I tease. You're a beautiful man.
Beautiful, beautiful man.
Anyway, so today the IEEPA Supreme Court case came out, which is, officially called the Learning Resources Incorporated et al. V. Trump. And that was decided today. It was a 6-3 vote that essentially held that IEEPA, which means something.
International Emergency Economic Powers Act.
Yeah, there you go. It does not authorize the president to impose tariffs. And we all probably thought that. But here was the core statutory reason. This is essentially what Chief Justice Roberts said after writing the main opinion, is that the administration's reading tried to get tariff power out of IEEPA's language about regulating importation, but IEEPA contains no reference to tariffs or duties, and no prior president has read it that way. That's the reasoning behind not allowing this. What I find hilarious about that, Rob, is that if the Supreme Court is now going to say that no other president has read something a certain way, and that's why Trump can't do it, I'd say, Trump, hold your horses, my friend, because I don't think Trump has read anything the same way as any other president, from what I can tell.
It's I guess interesting that this is where the line gets drawn on tariffs. Not surprising. I think from the very beginning, these are the questions that were posed. The experts said that this particular act didn't really apply. It does give some economic power during an emergency, but there's an old trick that I guess the federal government or those leaders in power have often used, which is to declare pretty much everything's an emergency because you get broad sweeping powers when it's in an emergency.
Yeah. And so to be clear, not all of the tariffs that were implemented were struck down by this particular ruling, just the ones that were using IEEPA as the basis for it. So there are going to still be tariffs that are still in effect. But the tariffs that were considered trafficking tariffs that were targeting China, Canada, Mexico, and then the reciprocal tariffs that was like this baseline 10% on most countries. And I think what they said was, well, we're not at war with the entire world. Although, I don't know, sometimes you think that maybe Trump is, but
Depends on the day.
yeah.
That might give some insight, I guess, into the administration's view of the world. I don't think they necessarily see the world as past presidents have, similar to what the Supreme Court said. No other president has read it this way. But everyone is across the board adversarial, interestingly, except with the exception of the few nations that have authoritarian leanings.
Yeah. I can't help but point out the fact that this wasn't tried in his first presidency, which means that even he didn't read it this way. And so the difference now is that,
It's so funny you think he's read it, period.
well, yes, yeah, okay, fair.
That's funny. Touche. He didn't read it 8 years ago. He didn't read it at all, period.
Honestly, the whole reason that I think we're talking about this right now anyway, I don't want to like tell everyone this is what happened with the Supreme Court. Like, go listen to a podcast that talks
Yeah,
about this. There are several
experts in that field.
experts. We are not. But what I subjected myself to was I listened to most of, if not all, of the speech that Trump gave today in front of an audience, poor audience, where he was talking about this. I only listened to it. I was driving and it was on Sirius XM, so I could hear it. I didn't get to see it, so I don't have that perspective. I'm sure it was interesting, but it sounded like a weird amalgamation of a hangry toddler who just got told no about something that they wanted and somebody who likes to masturbate in front of a mirror to their own image. That's what it sounded like to me. I assume he wasn't touching himself through
No,
the
I
whole thing, but
right. I did see the actual video. So no, I can confirm he was not. He did remind me of a toddler melting down in a Walmart toy aisle though.
this reminded me of my youngest kid when he was just a weein'. And whenever he was hungry or tired or any of the things that set off alcoholics, he would get so nasty that he would come up to you and just like an inch from your face, put his fingers together tightly and go, "I love you, zero." And so this whole speech, all I could think of is like Trump
I
holding his
love you.
fingers up. I love you, zero, to not one, but two of the Supreme Court justices that he appointed. So I love you, zero.
Interestingly, he does do that hand affectation, actually. So now every time he does it, I'm going to think, I love you, zero. So, what this really was psychologically was narcissistic injury on a public stage. So, surprise, surprise, he didn't come out and say, I respect the institution of the Supreme Court. I respect the separation of powers. We are going to change course. No, that's not at all what happened. This was a
It was cute that you think he might do
this
that,
was
but
a I love you zero moment. And yeah, it wasn't processed as a constitutional boundary that we're set up to adhere to. It was clearly felt as humiliation, and his response had to be loud enough to cover the bruise.
he accused the Supreme Court justices who voted against him of being influenced by foreign agents. To publicly say that, it's wow. What I thought was just more fascinating. It wasn't that it was just this severe narcissistic injury where he's holding this, I love you, zero. Gorsuch, I love you, zero, homie Barrett. It was that after he finished doing that, he had acknowledged that he lost, which is honestly, it's a huge step for him. I
Mhm.
think we should all praise him for being able to acknowledge that he lost at least a little bit for like 12 seconds before then he started to attack them. Then he started talking about how smart he is and he started to attack all the other presidents are stupid and I'm so smart and I've saved this country. I saved Intel and I'm the reason that all these Taiwanese companies are making chip factories in Texas, which is very untrue. The factories in Arizona and Texas, all of those factories were actually planned years and years ago before these tariffs went into effect, like at least 5 years ago. It was almost sad if it weren't so comical.
Well, if you remember John McEnroe, a famous tennis player from the 80s,
Yeah, he's beloved in Adam Sandler movies.
Johnny Mack. Anyway, so Johnny Mack had this habit of losing his damn mind on the referees, and that's kind of what he was known for. So when you can't argue against the rule, you argue against the referee. In our world, say in the forensic psychiatry world, when you're testifying and you can't argue against the facts that you're testifying, you're going to argue against your credentials. And that's one of the things we saw today. He was trying to delegitimize the referee. He can't argue the rule. In fact, he didn't mention the rule. He didn't say it's wrong because of X, Y, and Z. He didn't make a case for why it's an emergency, even. And that was the first thing. The other thing that struck me is that he was denigrating them, splitting. These are the good justices, these are the bad justices. We already knew the liberal justices were bad, but now we've got Roberts and Comey, Barrett, and Gorsuch who have joined the bad group. A week ago, whenever the last finding that was relevant, I can't come up with it because I don't follow the Supreme Court that closely, but they were wonderful humans. Everything's great. And today they're completely bad. And we certainly see this with him, that this good bad split. We've talked about nuance, but clearly he struggles seeing nuance. in people. But
Yeah.
really, it wasn't toward them. He wasn't chastising them. He was speaking to the larger crowd that feeds him, that feeds the ego. And he was trying to reestablish some dominance when he had gotten smacked down on this particular issue, particularly since he's invested so much in it, the concept of the tariffs.
Yeah, he has. Well, and I think he's already promised to use different methods to implement the tariffs. It's very much like watching a toddler. Honestly, somebody needs to get the man a sandwich. I think if he were to get a sandwich,
I think he eats plenty of sandwiches, buddy.
maybe a sippy cup, just give him a sippy cup and a sandwich before he hears these things, and he would probably do better. Or a nap. A nap would be good.
Well, he clearly needs naps.
He does, yeah.
I think the thing that troubled me is efforts to delegitimize, and I realize it struggled. And we've talked about this, that the courts have been asked to make rulings and to take a role that they were never really designed to do, to make policy. And they really have been put in a position to make policy because they don't have to go through all the hoops that our legislatures have to go through to actually achieve something. And they don't face the voters' wrath in order to make their rulings. But I think in general, most people still saw that institution as at least a legitimate institution. This effort to delegitimize them is frightening for the greater good.
It's frightening, but that is the playbook. This is the Trumpian playbook to delegitimize anything that doesn't agree with him. That was the goal with the media. That's the goal with apparently anybody who disagrees with him on the Supreme Court, even if they've agreed with him with a lot of other things. He likes loyalty to him, not the Constitution.
Or reciprocal loyalty. He doesn't have much back, but
No, he's admired mob bosses publicly. I mean, he thinks they're great. He likes authoritarian strongmen. He has opined that he wishes that he had military generals like Hitler's. The guy wants nothing but adoration and loyalty to him and him only. And if it's not there because somebody is stupidly following the Constitution, then you're dead to him until he can use you again. And that's probably what does separate him from a Kim Jong Un who would have just tied them up in front of an artillery gun and shot it. He'll find a use for the Supreme Court here again, and he'll love them, and he'll talk about how wonderful they are. They don't think. That's the difference between a serious strongman authoritarian who actually would just go in and disintegrate them in front of a gun versus a toddler who loves you zero while you're hungry. And then 20 minutes later, after you've eaten a sandwich and your belly's full, gives you a big old hug and gives you smooches on your
yeah.
face and tells you how much he loves you. That's the difference.
Although I have decided that in my household, I am going to start instituting emergency powers to get some shit done.
That's a good plan.
Yeah,
I do like that, yeah.
it works. Why not?
This is an emergency. What's the
Mhm.
emergency? I said so.
Yeah,
And that's the
out of
parenting.
bourbon.
Well, that is an emergency in your household,
Mhm.
Rob.
It is.
What's
It
the,
is.
yeah.
hmm
They know when dad's out of bourbon.
Right. I am going to institute emergency war powers on the regular.
That's a good plan. Speaking of somebody who needs a nap and power, since you brought it up, I think we got to talk about the Board of Peace.
Yeah. The two funniest things that got me was the Board of Peace, and I really couldn't even tell you their makeup at this point, but it wasn't the cast of regulars. But they called for 70 billion. They got 7. That was striking to me. So 70 billion for this project. We have 7. The other thing that was striking to me is that the Board of Peace needs its own army, apparently.
Nothing says peace like having your own army.
Private army.
Okay, so here's who is on the founding executive board. I'll give it to you. Chairman Donald J. Trump, hold your surprise.
hmm
Hold your surprise. The founding executive board appointed members Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, Sir Tony Blair, and then I have no idea who Mark Rowan, AJ Bonga, or Robert Gabriel are.
Mm.
And then High Representative for Gaza, Nikolai Ladenov. I'm running out of names I can say.
Right. The Russian name did not inspire confidence with me, just in my belly. I didn't.
No. Actually, it's a surprisingly small list of people for a board of peace.
Not a cast that I would say is incredibly well known or esteemed in the field of peace.
No.
This is the bad news bears of peace. Just not as lovable.
I'm trying to understand what their actual goal is.
So their first project is Palestine, right? So
Weirdly enough, Palestine is not on the board of peace.
yeah, because they don't count. We're going to go in and develop that wonderful waterfront property,
Yes.
put them all in ethnic uniforms and have them serving drinks. So, one, it's solutionism. It's a fantasy to fix a problem that is massive. And right now, the investment really is in the optics over the operation, having a board of peace. It's interesting to me that a president who has engaged in threats of violence, the chairperson of the board of peace is currently threatening to attack Iran for questionable reasons. There's an irony there that is difficult to sit with. Really, this whole thing was about the optics of having this inaugural board of peace meeting. That's the goal, is not necessarily some operational plan. They're underfunded by 90%. That's the equivalent of someone needing an antibiotic and I give them 10% of that antibiotic. Unlikely to be successful. What's the deal with him and peace?
He wants that Peace Prize so goddamn bad. Speaking of which, after he was given the Peace Prize,
Can
he
you
is
imagine
now
him paddling around the White House in like slippers and a robe wearing the goddamn Nobel Peace Prize?
Machado's Peace Prize. No, the best part is now he is backing Delcy Rodriguez to continue to be the leader
Yeah.
of Venezuela, which I'm not surprised because that was the easiest method, right? I mean, we said this weeks ago that he would probably go path of least resistance once he was bored of it, or if he needed a big win, he would give it to Machado. But she gave him the Peace Prize, so he's good. He's got this cover. Except that now he needs a board of peace.
It's reminiscent of the series Peacemaker, where he says, I love peace and I'll kill every man, woman, and child I need to in order to get it.
Yes, yes. I mean, if anything, are you not surprised that Skeletor isn't on the board of peace? Just, I feel like we're living in a timeline that is written by the same people that made Austin Powers at this point. That's the level of silliness that goes into everything that he does.
I want freaking sharks with lasers.
He's got,
We couldn't
anyway.
get sharks. We had to get flounders. Are they angry flounders?
Anyway, that's what it's kind of getting to at this point. But this, unfortunately, this ties, I think, directly into what we saw with the speech, what we've seen with everything that he's done. He needs somebody to tell him how great he is. And so he comes up with a board to give him applause, pats on the back. Great job with the peace. You're going
Yeah.
to displace thousands upon thousands of Palestinians and you're going to rebuild their land and then steal it from them.
So it's peace conference theater. It's signaling virtue. It's signaling strength. It's signaling leadership without actually having to engage in any of those things.
Yeah. Well
Yeah, I
done,
mean,
sir.
well, peace isn't an event. I mean, it's a system. You have to operationalize this. What's our goal? How are we going to do it? How do we get there? And there's some pieces lacking.
No, I don't know. I think if you say the word peace in the title of the board, I think that does it. I'm pretty sure you're good. When I think about the lack of attention that he has, it seems like he does one thing until he's bored of it and then goes off to the next. What I can't help but think is, does he just lay around the White House like a scene from The Great Gatsby, just complaining about how bored he is? And then, hey, I have an idea. Let's go make a board of peace. Let's invade Venezuela. Let's get Greenland. Has he fallen off the Greenland thing yet? Seems like he
It
has.
seems
Yeah.
it's slipped out of that steel trap that is.
His mind.
Mhm.
And then you said something, there was like a deal in the works, and then we're good now, but there's no movement. Yeah. So I want to take a step back. I got to take a step back and think about this from a 10,000-foot view because I know you've had this experience. I know you have because you and I work in the same field. But when you're working on an inpatient psych unit and when you meet somebody for the first time who is psychotic, and I think most people, when they think about somebody who's psychotic, they think about like the movies. They think about somebody who's like really over the top. But when somebody's truly psychotic, there's something about them that's like, 'cause they don't just come out and tell you, right? Like when they're really psychotic, they're not saying I'm psychotic. When you're talking to them and they're using word salad, which is just words that don't make any sense, you really struggle to understand it. Like you're like, what's wrong with me for a little bit, right? For a few seconds, you're like, what's wrong with my brain? Why can't I understand what this person is saying? And that's the thing that kind of tips you. Oh, there's this person is psychotic. They're seeing something, or they're very disorganized. And so, in that very same way, aren't we all kind of asking, as you're trying to understand this? And I imagine our tens of listeners feel the same way. Like, as you're trying to understand this, what the fuck is wrong? Like, why can't I put myself into the shoes of this person? Like, I'm struggling to empathize. And that's what we do, right? We empathize with people, but having such a hard time fully empathizing with this perspective because it's so bizarre. I mean, help me understand this, Robbie. Like, am I going crazy? Am I taking crazy pills?
No, well, you're not crazy. This is nuts. So we are watching something that diverges so significantly from the norms and the rules as we see them that, yeah, the first question I often have is, I'm not following. I don't understand. And I don't know if there is a 30,000-foot view on this because I think it circles a singular ego. And that's why it feels so crazy is that most leaders, most prior presidents are constrained by solid staff that keep them on task, policies that they have to be internally consistent for. Maybe that's the best thing. There is no internal consistency to the decisions being made, which leaves all us, oh, we're going this direction. No, whoa, we're over. Wait, we went this way. So the lack of internal consistency, or even most of us feel a need to be consistent. If we say something on one day, we have to follow through it on successive days. If we make a promise now, we have to adhere to that promise later. And what we're seeing, it's not cohesive in kind of a psychotic way. Now, I'm not saying our president's psychotic by any means. It's just that the outcome lacking any cohesion and our brains trying to follow a narrative, and that narrative keeps changing angles on us and we can't keep up with it.
It's watching somebody who doesn't play by the same rules as everybody else, but we're still trying to. It's somebody who just exists within a very different version of reality. And that version of reality is meant and built only to satisfy that ego. And the rest of us, we're trying to play the game that's in front of us. We're trying to golf by the rules, and his caddies are just dropping the fucking ball wherever they want so he can play it. And everyone around him is saying, great shot, sir. While the rest of us are going, what the fuck? And we're still counting our strokes, right? Like we're still trying to function in this world. He's just completely surrounded by people who are allowing him to exist in this alternate reality where he can do whatever he fuck he wants. And the second that he's called on it, he gets upset. He loves you zero and he needs a nap.
Unsettling, is it not?
Yes.
Well, you've left me speechless. Plus, I started thinking about the movie Caddyshack and Ted Knight's character who kept cheating. Danny, I've sent boys younger than you to the electric chair. Felt I owed it to him. How about a fresca? There's the challenge. And each week we've based this challenge attempting to make sense of it in narrative format when in fact what it really falls back to is ego protection. And ego protection rarely follows a narrative one can track. That if you're existing at that level, if you're just protecting your ego, then that's one day you sweep your kids up in your arms and hug them because that's what makes you feel good, and the next day you kick the dog because that's what makes you feel better, and the next day you're screaming at your wife because you can't find your shoes. There is no internal consistency there. The cohesion is not there, and that's where we get stuck as a populace. It's also one of the great strengths because the folks that support him, they build their own narrative, their own story. They talk about four-dimensional chess. They talk about the art of the deal. Uh,
He's the guy who wrote The Art of the Deal. And you're
he
like,
literally wrote the book on this,
and he literally didn't.
and he literally did not.
Yeah. You can all understand to some extent the flaws of his thinking, like the way that he exists. And you can see that within his inner circle, it's been built in such a way to just allow it to keep happening. But I can only imagine that our tens of listeners are thinking not necessarily about that, but about the supporters, right? It's about the people they deal with on a daily basis. It's about how does somebody watch this and go, yep, That's cool. I hope that has the nuclear codes because there are people who not only wanted this, but want more of it, right? Like they want this guy to take over and just be king. That's what they want. And so if you're dealing with that, how do you make that work with your brain? How do you watch this and go, yes, awesome?
Wow. So, how do you manage an incoherent narrative? Stay sane, not get pulled into the incoherence. If I was advising someone, if someone I had setting them across the office from me, I would say you don't let crazy drive the bus. It's always going to go off the cliff eventually. So, you never let crazy drive the bus. You make the decisions. Where we're stuck is that that individual is firmly in the driver's seat and we're sitting in the back of the bus. So, know the temptation. You don't argue with these supporters. You let time prove the point for you. And I do believe time will prove the point for us. We used to talk a lot about getting involved locally. You can make a coherent narrative in your local environment. And I think it does start there. Doing will always trump talking. So you hold your ground because it's yours to hold. You tend to the things that are needful because they're yours to be tended to. And you just do. You demonstrate. You don't talk, which is interesting for a podcaster to say, yeah, words are cheap, man.
How does somebody empathize? Because it's not that you're driving down the street and trying to empathize with some random person who's got Trump 2028 sticker on their vehicle. And it's that the people might be in your life, right? Like these are people who you maybe once had close relationships with, who they're really struggling with. And I do see that a lot where somebody's just like, I can't even fathom why this person would support this but then would continue to watch this and watch things because, yeah, time has happened. We're already seeing the wheels are coming off. This bus has no wheels. It is just driving on rims and there's fucking sparks flying everywhere. And yet there's still people in the front of the bus who are like, wow, you're doing a great job driving. Awesome. For somebody who's really struggling with somebody really close in your life who you care about or cared about, how do you empathize with this person as you're watching them get pulled deeper and deeper into the cognitive dissonance that's happening where they've supported something that does not match up with their morals from before. And yet they're so deep into it that it's damn near impossible for them to come out of it. But you're trying to coexist because you don't want to cut off all of your family. You got to go to the reunions and whatnot. How do you do that?
Let's start at the top. So during the first administration, 16 to 20, there was frequent stories that leaked into the public sphere in which Jared Kushner was the Trump whisperer. That late at night, Trump would get very angsty and anxiety ridden and second guess himself. And Kushner somehow had the ability to whisper sweet nothings and make him feel better. If we're going to empathize, let's step back and imagine what it's like to have an ego that is as fragile, as prone to the winds as this ego, and how frightening that must be to see almost everything coming at you as a potential threat to your ego or soothing to your ego, and how that can't result in an individual that feels truly confident, truly self-satisfied. I think there's a reason why we get the 3 a.m. Truth Social runs, is that's when he's feeling his most vulnerable, just like most of us. I mean, I think our tens of listeners can identify with what it feels like to wake up in the middle of the night, stare at your ceiling, and every problem, concern, worry that you have feels like it's sitting on your chest, and they're so much bigger than, as soon as the sun comes up, most of that evaporates. There is a study, and I think it was in 2025 from Cambridge, maybe, that looked at Trump supporters, not just MAGA, the ones that were sort of ride or die for Trump. The findings showed that they had an authoritarian disposition, a group based psychology, they were anti elite, they had higher antagonism and lower empathy. My theory on this, at least, and that study wasn't looking in terms of personality traits necessarily, but my theory on this is that those who support him probably have a personality structure similar to him. And the things that he does actually ends up soothing their ego as well, their sense of being left behind, their sense of being forgotten, their sense of being disrespected. When he does these things, it actually props up their ego, which is on the fragile edge as well.
It's so hard to think about somebody who's anti-elite being so supportive of a person who has made their entire fame out of being
Elite.
at least financially elite, physically maybe not so. So what you're saying is we empathize with them because their egos are fragile?
That they share that structure with him, that he mirrors them in a way that makes them feel comfortable, and his actions help prop up those things that are attacking their ego. Again, if you look at the supporters, they do tend to fall into a certain socioeconomic class. They tend to be working white or Caucasian population, mostly rural supporters, and they are under threat. I mean, this is the greatest wealth disequity that has ever existed in the history of the world, I think. I might have just made that up, but it sounds like it should be true.
In the US at least, right?
Yeah. So is massive disequilibrium in the share of wealth, jobs that are losing market share, technology advancing. I've often said this, but so many of his supporters are doing jobs that robots, and I'm not exaggerating, robots will do in 10 or 15 years. And where I grew up, a lot of folks found jobs in environments that it was granddad worked there, dad worked there, my kids will work there. It was a good job. Interestingly, they were mostly union jobs at that time, and that's evaporated. Good benefits. You could have a respectable life. And when you have that, your ego has lots of reason to be propped up. When you see that slipping away and you see it slipping away for yourself, and you assume it's going to slip away from your children because they don't have the same opportunities you did, and you're pissed because your dad had better opportunities than you did, they have a lot of reason to have fragile egos. They are under attack. They do not know if they're going to be able to take care of their families, give their families what they want to give their families. Our tens of listeners, think of what you derive your sense of self from, and it's probably things like being a parent, being a husband, wife, taking care of people, meeting your responsibilities, doing good at work. Those are the kinds of things that we do. And when you start to take those away, and the work becomes something that you can't be promised any longer, that you don't know what's next, and you do feel it. You might not know it for sure. I mean, I don't know if these folks are following the advancements in technology and AI, but they feel something in the air that's shifting. And if you take away their ability to make a living, then they can't take care of their family, and you're just stealing away identity piece after identity piece, which ends up making the ego very fragile. And when they see Trump, even though he is not actually doing the things that he says he's doing, he's not aggressively out there working for the little guy. He says it, and he attacks the elitists that have it easy and they don't have to worry, and it feels temporarily good. So I think he is an ego salve for this population, and that's why they love him so much. And then also, once you've bought in and you've supported him, and you've screamed at your relatives, and you've broken the David's family rule of talking about blowjobs at Thanksgiving, when you've crossed the Rubicon, it is difficult to turn around and walk back,
Yeah.
because that's your ego now. You're a Trump guy.
I think that's what I'm getting at too. You have sheep who are following the shepherd, who turns out to just be a wolf in shepherd's clothing, leading them off to slaughter. But once they've committed to that, it becomes their identity. It's not just, I support him. It's, this is who I am now. I guess the way that I would say, try to wrap your brain around potentially empathizing with it isn't necessarily to empathize with it. It's just to understand that once somebody's identity is so wrapped up in something that you're not going to bring them back from that. They need to come to that conclusion on their own. What you can do is not make it worse, not drive them further into their identity by cutting them off from what could be community that exists outside of that. What they find within that identity is a community that all agrees with them. You're sitting on the outside of that saying, what the fuck is wrong with you? Can't you see you're following a wolf? And they're thinking, well, now you're the bad guy.
This is definitely not a thing you can debate someone out of. You can certainly still engage with them as humans, help them do their yard work, whatever. Assist them, a human to human, that's likely to yield more benefit over the long term. Arguing with them is not going to help a lot. It reminds me when I was in college, one of my pastimes when I was killing time between classes was to go to College Green and watch born again Christians argue with the atheists. I don't think anyone's mind was ever changed, not one time, because there's just some core beliefs that you cannot be argued out of. You live. Famous poet named Rainier Rilke said, you have to live your questions, and the answers come. Now, the challenging thing for us right now is that there are messes that are generational messes, and we might not live to see the solutions. We might not live long enough to see the answers. And that sometimes you got to punch yourself in the nuts a couple of times to remind yourself that you don't like to punch yourself in the nuts. So once it's been enough time, you just forget. I think that hurts, but wham! Oh my, yeah, it really does. So you got to remind yourself. And in a society such as ours, and a population such as ours, and a country as big as ours, it takes so much time. So the pain that will be reaped from this administration will eventually cause a tipping point in which things change.
Actually do it at a remarkably rapid pace. The taste for the immigration policies have gone way down.
Mhm.
That was one of the biggest things, and now people are less excited about it, with some exceptions.
Talking about something in theory is always so much different. Like kids playing war, it's so much different than going to war. So it was easy to talk about, yeah, I'm against illegal immigration. But then watching a 5-year-old in a teddy bear hoodie get picked up by ICE, well, now all of a sudden it's real.
Yeah. I'm hoping that people find some satisfaction from that.
I find none. I love you this much right now, David.
I love you zero. You gotta really scrunch your face while you're doing it too. You gotta be
Yeah,
like
I love
really
you.
show the distaste. I love you zero.
I used to work with someone when she'd get mad at me, she'd look at me and she'd go, God, I just hate your face.
Worked with or married to?
Worked with.
Okay. Just wonder. Dated maybe?
No, 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 no. Professionally. Not that
That's
kind of professionally. In my role as a medical professional, get mad at me. God, I just hate your face.
I had some patients say that to me. Don't know about coworkers. Probably all of them think it. You probably thinking it right now.
I'm thinking it right now.
Can we do some prescriptions here?
Sure. So our politicians cannot yell for 90 minutes and say absolutely nothing. When a speech is all grievance, dominance, self-mythology, it's not leadership. It's emotional regulation by a microphone. If the national avatar needs constant applause to hold shape, the problem is not the crowd, it's the structure.
I'm going to call this the toddler rule. In the future, if Trump gets any bad news from the Supreme Court, he has to first eat a sandwich, drink from a sippy cup, take a nap, then he gets to make a speech about it.
Who's going to pat his bottom to make sure it's not wet and or full of shit?
Stephen Miller
Stephen Miller has to do that.
or Caroline Levitt.
Stephen Miller looks so angry all the time that we just may struck on the why of it. That's his job around the White House.
Is just to be angry?
No, doing the when your kids are little and you kind of pat their ass
To see if they're
diaper
see
to
if the
see if it's
diaper's wet?
yeah, if it's too firm or or full of shit.
Who has to change it though? Also Stephen Miller?
Melania,
I doubt that very seriously.
Jared Kushner,
I don't
Steve
think he's
Bannon,
around. No, I'm guessing it's Stephen Miller.
Steve Miller as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why he's so mad.
Wouldn't you be? Okay. Well, thank you to everybody for sticking around. We really appreciate all tens of our listeners. Please go to our website, sign up for our email list. Go ahead and hit subscribe, hit like, share with your friends. We would love to have all of your smart, thoughtful friends listening to us as well.
I'd love to be able to say hundreds of listeners at some point. I will always adore the tens of listeners that were with us, but it would be really cool to say hundreds of listeners.
Like maybe somebody's kind of listening, like they fell asleep and this just fucking popped onto their podcast player
Maybe.
accidentally, and then they woke up and they changed it.
I don't believe we're high enough on the algorithm to just randomly pop on anyone's iPod.
Okay. Well, let's cue up that music and we are out.